Hey everyone, it's Hannah. I'm just popping in real quick to give you some context on what today's video is all about. In college, while studying game design, I took a class all about video games and learning, which dealt with how video games can be used as learning tools, as well as how video games teach players to play the game. So I ended up doing a semester-long project on the game We Happy Few, and I wrote a whole research paper on how We Happy Few teaches players how to play itself. So anyway, I thought that some of you guys would find my findings pretty interesting, so I created a little presentation for you guys and summarized my paper, which you're about to see. So without further ado, I present to you Learning in We Happy Few. We Happy Few is a survival horror game set in a dystopian England. Here, the inhabitants of the city are all addicted to a drug called joy, which is a hallucinogen used to cover up the darkness that the city is hiding. Players take on the role of an average citizen named Arthur, and they get to decide whether or not they want to take their joy. So today I'm going to go over the main techniques the game uses to teach players how to play itself. We Happy Few does this by illustrating controls, through repetition in audio, safe spaces, by encouraging the player to make decisions, and finally through tutorials and objectives. So let's start with talking about how the game teaches players by explicitly showing what different buttons on the controller do. According to an academic paper written by James Paul G., he titles this concept Information Just in Time. And there is a great example of this right at the beginning of the game, when players are given the choice to either take their joy or not. And as you can see from the screenshot, each option is displayed as a button, which shows the player what each button does. Another way that We Happy Few teaches players how to play the game is through repetition. The player's first task as Arthur is to select whether or not to redact articles from the newspaper. And you actually end up going through quite a few articles, and this becomes pretty repetitive. However, according to an academic journal written by Alicia and Lykins, repetition has been proven to actually be pretty effective in learning. Another technique of learning in We Happy Few is the use of audio. For example, early in the game, Arthur is trapped in an underground tunnel, and he actually says out loud that he needs to create a lockpick in order to open a jammed door. And the player can discover that they can collect bobby pins, and these can be crafted into a lockpick. And once the player does this, Arthur again uses his voice to reward the player for figuring out the puzzle. I read in an academic paper written by Katrin Becker that brings about the idea that using multiple styles of learning can actually increase learning overall. And so in the case of We Happy Few, using audio along with visuals can definitely make learning more effective for players. Now let's move on to safe spaces. At the start of the game, the player finds themselves in a relatively small office building where they can take their time exploring, and there's really no threat to the player at this time. According to G, this space is called the fish tank, and the main purpose is to introduce the controls. Not long after the player exits the fish tank, they find themselves in a pretty big open-world landscape, which G calls a sandbox. This area allows players to get even more comfortable with the style of the game and learn more advanced controls. G's principle of co-design states that learning comes from active participation in a game. We Happy Few does this by asking the player to make choices. The game indirectly has the player make choices by letting players choose where they want to explore. And the game directly asks the player to make decisions by asking the player to select one of two options before continuing the game, such as shown in the screenshot. We Happy Few also utilizes tutorials and objectives, which are actually very helpful to learn what to do next. And as you can see in the picture, throughout the beginning portion of the game, there's a tutorial pop-up that teaches the player several skills. And the picture on the right shows that there is an objective list that sits at the top of the screen and tells the player their current goal or what they're supposed to be doing next. So, in conclusion, We Happy Few uses several different techniques to teach players about the game. And it does this through all of the listed techniques here, plus even more that I didn't have time to mention. But overall, We Happy Few is pretty successful at utilizing different strategies of teaching. Well, that's it, everyone. I know this video was a little bit different than normal, but hopefully you found my research interesting. Please leave me a thumbs up on this video if you want to see more game design videos, and of course subscribe if you haven't already. Also, don't forget to hit that little bell icon to be notified every time I upload a new video. Thank you so much for watching, and until we meet again, my heroes. See ya.